But it was a good process.
With us now from New York, the president of Americans for Tax Reform, Grover Norquist. Grover, always good to see you. Let me ask you, what do you think of the deal to keep the government open? Good deal, bad deal?
It was progress. It was less spending, not more. I'd like to go further in that direction, but I don't want to whine too much when we're at least walking in the right direction because I wanted to run faster. I worry when we start heading in the wrong direction, and Boehner got what he wanted. A significant number of cuts. Now we're on to the main stage to debate the next 10 years, and that's Paul Ryan's $6 trillion spending cut.
Well, Grover, let's go to the next step, actually, before that debate is finished. Of course, we're going to be talking about the debt ceiling. There are a lot of freshmen that are talking about the need of getting significant spending cuts before agreeing to increasing the debt ceiling. What do you think? Should they hold the debt ceiling hostage, or should they go ahead and vote to increase it? No questions asked.
Well, I think that it should not be passed standalone. There needs to be some things attached to it. I don't know whether those will be dollar tax cuts or maybe procedural changes. There's a very good idea that Congressman Nunes has out of California that would require all state and local governments, when they borrow money, to be transparent about their pension liabilities out into the future. They don't do that now. I think that's a very reasonable thing. It'd be very difficult for Obama and the Democrats to say no. There are a series of reforms like that that don't save you any money tomorrow, but over the next 30 years save you trillions.
Pat Buchanan?
Yeah, Grover, we've been talking here about everything has to be on the table, including defense and Medicare, Medicaid, and taxes. How many of those, say, 240 Republicans signed your No New Taxes pledge, which I guess binds them not to vote for any tax increase in the next 2 years?
Okay, the commitment that 235 Republican members of the House and 40 Republicans in the Senate have signed is the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. It says no raising taxes. So taxes are off the table. I know that Obama and the Democrats like to focus on tax increases, but as Paul Ryan has pointed out, there's $6 trillion in overspending to be culled back. You don't need to raise taxes. You can take that money off the table by spending less, just as governors around the country are doing. Cuomo in New York is saying no to tax increases, do it on spending. Corbett in Pennsylvania, Christie in New Jersey, Florida,
Grover,
Texas.
By the way, you can't see it down here, but Buchanan smiling ear to ear. Everybody else wants a piece of you. Let's start it up, and then we're going to go up to New York. Mark McKinnon.
Hey, Grover, I said earlier I think the Republicans have largely won the spending narrative, but do you really think that we can address the fiscal crisis that we got just through cuts? Don't there have to be revenue enhancements? No. And don't Republicans have to step up to the plate? And what would be your recommendations on where that revenue would come from?
Okay, two things. The only way to reduce spending in the deficit is to take tax increases off the table and to focus on spending. Tax increases are what politicians do when they don't want to govern, when they don't want to reform government, when they don't want to make choices. They say, we'll do all the stupid stuff we used to do, and we'll raise taxes to pay for it. When you say taxes are off the table, then that's the only time that they ever think about reducing government spending. So taxes are not in addition to, they're instead of budget discipline. Okay. And that's why the good news is they're off the table. Democrats can talk about raising taxes all they want. Between now and 2012, they're welcome to it.
Okay, Andrea Mitchell.
What about the social issues, the riders that we saw originally, and not any of those social policy questions should be part of a debt ceiling deal? What does John Boehner mean when he says that the president's not going to get a clean piece of legislation? I understand that he's looking for some real structural changes in spending, caps, targets, whatever. But what about these social questions?
Right. I think the social issues will come up in the appropriations and in legislation over the next year. When we're focused on the debt ceiling, it's going to be clean in the sense that everything attached to it is going to deal with reducing the debt, reducing future debt. But it's not going to be, hey, Mr. President, if you want to spend more money, go ahead, we don't care. It's going to be, if you're going to spend some money, here's the leash you're on, because it's not a blank check.
So your message to Mike Pence and some of the other social conservatives is that abortion should not be part of this debate, the spending debate.
Not this particular debate. I mean, it's not that the issue won't come up. I believe they got a commitment to have a vote in the House and the Senate on Planned Parenthood and some of those issues. It just doesn't need to be attached to this fight. But it'll come up. It'll get its day in court.
What if the power of Mike Pence, what he represents, and the new Tea Party members of the Republican Congress, what if they get their way and the debt ceiling limit is not passed? What harm comes to the economy?
Well, if the debt ceiling isn't passed, then the government can't borrow more money, so it puts a limit on how much they can spend. One of the challenges is the guy who gets to decide how to allocate the money then is President Obama. And I'm not sure that his priorities are those of the American people. So I support all those efforts to say, if the government shuts down or if we don't have more money, here's the priority list. First, you have to pay the troops. You have to pay interest on the debt. You got to do Social Security. You don't get to decide.
What happens to the markets here in New York?
Well, I don't think we're going to get there, but I think it depends on if people are fighting for less and they know that in a week there'll be a decision that reduces the size and scope of government, the markets will be happy. If they don't know what the fight's about, then they could be very concerned.
Grover, at the center of all this talk about the budget, people keep talking about entitlements. And one of the primary ones we've been talking about this week is Medicare. What's the best idea you've heard and the most plausible at the same time for saving Medicare?
Okay, take a look at what Paul Ryan put forward. Paul Ryan's actually got a real budget out there, not a series of essays. And again, over the next decade, it saves $6 trillion from what Obama wants to spend. And he has $1.5 trillion in tax increases in his present budget. Now, he's going to come out Wednesday with more tax increases to increase spending. And he'll call it deficit reduction. But it's just more tax increases. I think what Paul Ryan did on two things. Medicare, he gives people more options. He allows people to prepay to move towards a defined contribution plan, as most companies have already done with pensions. I think that's the way to go. You want to reform entitlements, not cut them.
So a lot of people have said he's gutting Medicare, Medicaid, things like that. He's punishing the middle class. Yeah. You disagree with that?
No, because that's what they said. If you were doubling Medicare, the Democrat response is, oh, you're gutting it. They just say that on automatic play. They don't read the stuff. They just say that, which is why it doesn't quite work as well anymore. But the big reform is he's taking the success of welfare reform, the bill that Bill Clinton signed that reduced the number of people on welfare, that gave 50 states a lot more flexibility so that states were better off financially. People got off welfare. The people who needed to be taken care of were taken care of. He's saying, let's take that model and do it for Medicaid and food stamps and housing subsidies. All of the income-based welfare programs will be treated as aid to families with dependent children was, saved a lot of money without cutting and slashing. So actually, I think a very good idea.
You know, Buchanan, 235 Republicans. Let's show Pat smile. Show Pat. I mean, 200.
Those guys.
You're not going to. That's why you're smiling.
Well, listen, that's why I don't think you're going to get taxes are off the table.
Grover just said it.
We just did it, Joe, right here.
No. Grover's got 235 nailed down. He's just going to hold that pledge up.
5 left, aren't there?
There's only 5 left after that.
Grover Norquist, thank you.
All right, Grover, thank you very much. No, seriously, significantly, those are real numbers. You get 235 people to sign Grover's pledge.
They've done it.
Not to increase taxes.